Live from Automated Studios in Polymath's global, incredibly impressive, totally not an office share headquarters in San Francisco, California, I'm Stefan and I'm super excited to launch this week's episode of Automated.
And with you is Ilia as well.
When's he coming in? Is that a third party that you're just talking about there?
Absolutely. Always talking about myself in the third person.
And after I'm done making fun of my co-founder, this is Automated, our weekly podcast where we talk about how exactly you build robots after all. We always start off with a fun game where we spitball a robot into existence. And then after that, today we're going to be talking a little bit about the state of the broader autonomy and robotics industry. Because if a couple of blog posts said it's dead, it almost certainly is, right?
I mean, basically, if the internet says so, it must be true.
That's how I learned that Jennifer Hudson is an alien overlord from the reptile Hollow Earth. With that conspiracy theory out of the way, so this week, Ilia, why don't you draw a setting card for what we should be working on?
Let's see. Setting card.
Indoor localization.
On
campuses.
Nice.
This is a great combination.
Yep.
So let's say in this scenario, I was a popular kid in college. I got really good at knowing the school administration, knowing all the cool kids, as I want to do. We're a lot of Abercrombie. You just figured out how to be great at indoor localization, which is easy.
Well, let's take a step back. How do we want to localize, right?
Yeah.
So here's my proposal. A lot of people are using LiDAR.
And I want to actually, before we get into how we're indoor localizing, indoor localization is a bugbear for me. Just this morning, I was talking to a corporate innovation type of person who challenged me, why is indoor localization so hard in the first place, given that there's all these AMR companies and there's not that many autonomy companies in mines. So AMRs must obviously be easier. So maybe as an intro for those people listening who've never tried to do indoor localization, why is it so hard to know where you are? You're just in a building.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that some people realize, but not all, is that GPS doesn't work indoors. When you look at your location on a phone, on Android or iPhone, modern phones, they're actually faking your location by knowing what Wi-Fi connection you're in, what towers are connected to. They're not actually...
Couldn't they just fake it good enough to tell me that I'm in this room?
Oh, it's fake to, 30-meter accuracy, maybe. It's pretty rough.
Okay.
But yeah, they're not going to be great, especially in rooms they've never been in. So you can't use GPS. So that's out the window. So really what you're left with is you got to look at your environment almost as a human does and try to figure out, have I been here before? Do I know the dimensions of the room? Do I know where I need to go to?
Okay. Well, can't you just do SLAM?
Yeah, SLAM.
Someone told me earlier today, just use SLAM.
Just do SLAM.
Result.
Exactly.
It's a great acronym.
Yeah, the acronym stands for Simultaneous Localization and Mapping. The fun, dirty secret of the industry is nobody actually does SLAM. Most companies will map first and then localize in the map. Nobody tries to both build a map and localize at the same time because you get a lot of creeping errors. Your map gets distorted.
That's such a big deal about a creeping error. You just find your way. I'm here and I want to go through the doorway. What's the problem that I'm going to run into? It's, 10 feet away.
Well, the fun part is breaking down your sentence there. What does here mean?
From here.
Here. Yeah, here. Yeah. So how far are you from the wall? How far is the door? Do you even know that that's a door and not just a gap in reality? Yeah, understanding what a door looks like. Now you got to feed in ML and all sorts of stuff, right? So the classic approach is you use a 2D LiDAR, you map out your space and you figure out the distance to every object around you. And then you what's called scan matching, where you say, here's the LiDAR 2D scan I have. Have I mapped this area before? And if I have, can I line up kind of the scan I'm getting now to the historic scan I've gotten before? The problem with trying to do that simultaneously is that as you're driving around, you're accumulating error. And so your map kind of gets melty and distorted. There's lots of videos online you can find about error correction for SLAM. And when you get back to the same place, you have this trick of, I've been here before, therefore I can correct all my errors. But that magical step...
beacons to do that as well.
Yeah, and beacons can help you a little bit. Exactly. So that's a hard... Indoor localization is one of those things that solved 90%, but getting to 100 is exponentially more difficult.
And this is a problem that definitely is easily solved when you throw large sums of money at it because you're a FANG company and you want to build an indoor home robot.
Yeah. My group at Amazon, there's a sister group that was working just on this problem, and they spent 4 years getting something that mostly works.
And how mostly is mostly?
Still gets lost And you still have to kind of bring it back to the dock, which is kind of a home position that it can recenter on.
All right, so Mr. CTO, you've solved some flavor of indoor localization some way.
Let me just suggest, right?
Yeah.
So for a campus,
Yeah.
you can, of course, use beacons, you can use LiDAR, you can do all those.
But campuses are large and they don't have a lot of money.
Exactly. So here's my alternative. If you're going to localize in dorms, why not just measure the aerosolized alcohol content? And what you do is you just build up a heat map, right? So what you figure out is this semester, this particular dorm has a higher level aerosolized alcohol content. So I'm going to use that as my starting location.
All right, well, so what flavor indoor localization do you think you would have solved as a ambitious campus robotics vendor? Like, what are we working with?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm joking obviously about the aerosolized alcohol, but really what you want to do is you want to mix a bunch of sensors.
Okay.
So you want to mix.
So maybe for the purpose of this, we're just saying you've kind of more or less vaguely solved it, but it's still not magically accurate. You haven't solved it to centimeter level accuracy. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of like businesses that you could reasonably have in a campus that are not too unfun, so definitely not like campus delivery robots, because too many people are doing that and stop being fun. What are good things that mobile robots could do within a campus? Maybe it's like, I don't want to do beer delivery. Maybe, I don't know.
So, one of the things I remember back to high school is they said, when you go to university, nobody's going to check that you come to your class.
Ooh.
So what you do instead is you have a robot that roams the halls, detects a person, grabs them, and drags them to their class.
I think more than that, actually. So when I was in school, there's some professors who, do things like record their lectures. With Zoom, more of them started to. But I'm sure there's a decent number of professors who do not record their lectures, who cannot set up AV equipment. But buying AV equipment for every single room in a campus is incredibly expensive, right? Like you're probably talking about, $250,000, $500,000 investment. So what if we build a robot that can drive throughout the campus and go to classes that are not being recorded to record them?
I feel like we'd be breaking some sort of privacy law here.
Shut up. What's a few dozen sensors and machine learning models pointing at kids talking about sensitive subjects?
That's kind of the problem that the Astra program at Amazon had, right? The question everybody had is like, well, if it's an Alexa on wheels, isn't it cheaper just to put an Alexa in every room? Because if you're talking about $250,000, I'm making a functional robot that will work well and reliably.
I think this fleet of robots, it's going to be more replaceable. It's going to be more up to date. The AV stacks in these
handle stairs.
You could solve it. So I mean, like we've met a company who used treads and could take any stairs at like 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's built to batter down doors.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a little bit aggressive to smash into a lecture hall. You are now being recorded.
Definitely make an appearance.
Yeah.
You pop it through the door, aim your camera right at the
person.
Yeah. Zoom in and make a lot of mechanical noise.
And of course, red targeting laser.
Yeah. I mean, that's how people know if they're being watched. That delays the privacy.
Yeah. Amazing increase in efficiency in teaching.
So if we're building this system that shows it's an AV cart, it's a self-driving AV cart is really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we either need to figure out how to deal with stairs, or we need to be able to, I mean, most campuses are accessible. So we either need to work with stairs or elevators. We also need to know which classes to go to. Yeah. And since the problem is overcoming tech reluctance, I think what we'd have to do is we'd have to scrape the syllabi of different classes, find out which ones have a Zoom or whatever, Hangout, Teams probably, blank. And
Stefan's a huge fan of Teams.
Yeah,
if you want to sponsor Stefan, ask the Microsoft Teams group.
Yeah. Jesus, it is the worst of all worlds. So we scrape all of that, find the ones that don't have a link. So I'm a Python master because I read 3 chapters of also called Automate It.
Yeah.
So I build this scraper. I can tell you which classes we need to record, and then you're good, right? Robot.
Well, then you gotta localize those classes in space.
Yep.
Right. So if somebody says,
we have a pre-map of the campus.
Yeah.
Like they have those nice little pretty maps that they hand out with like the trees.
Yeah, those are not to scale. Yeah, that's actually another fundamental problem localizing indoors is as built kind of architecture design versus what's really there. It doesn't actually tend to agree. And so you got to probably add on a little ML layer to detect like, oh, somebody's class is in Atrium 103. You're driving by, you look at the door number and you're trying to figure out, yes, this room is Atrium 103.
Well, wouldn't we just have a pre-map that says these spaces are Atrium 103?
Yeah, a human could go through and label every single thing.
Yep.
I mean, for a campus.
That seems easier than like reading door signs on the fly.
Yeah.
All right, so we have our map of where Atrium 103 is. We've detected that there is a class in Atrium 103 that does not have a Zoom link.
Well, not only that, I think we should organize this based on professors with most amount of people skipping, right? To get the most benefit.
Yeah.
If it's a class where everybody's 100% attendance.
I mean, I actually don't know if we have to figure out how many people are skipping. We probably you can assume a steady rate of like 20 to 40% of students aren't showing up to class. So if 20% is greater than 50, then maybe you dispatch a robot to it.
Yeah, exactly. But then you got to monitor how many people are in each class.
Yep.
Oh,
well, when you barge out the door, actually, that might be a way to do it. What you could do is if the assumed skipping rate is 30%, you get into the classroom, you do a quick people count, and if the people count is greater than 70% attendance, then you go to the next class.
You could people count. You could also just have a microphone and record the amount of screaming that happens when you smash down the door.
Well, I mean, the thing is we all know about robots is the first time people will scream, the second time people will be shocked, and the 15th time you smash down a door, everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, there's a robot smashing down the door.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's how robots work.
Exactly.
So we've gotten into the room, we recorded. I mean, in terms of actually navigating around the building, once we have indoor localization, it's basically just point and click, go to this GPS coordinate and don't hit anybody.
Well, except for the GPS coordinate. You kind of have two layers of the planner. One is the global kind of floor plan, which says I'm here and I need to get to classroom 123.
Yep.
This is the kind of shortest, most reasonable path, including things like entering an elevator, telling the elevator system that you want to go to a particular floor.
Yep.
Actually, there's a lot of hospitals in, I believe, both South Korea and Singapore. Thank you. That have started to actually build these kind of moving carts that talk to the elevator system. So that kind of global plan is interesting because you got to do predictive stuff.
The group from Open Source Robotics is working on that. They're actually building a standard way so that different robots can ask the elevator to get to the right floor.
Yeah.
So theoretically, if this campus is in Singapore or South Korea, we don't need to push the elevator buttons.
No. And you really that's one of those classic, robots are the wrong solution. You could make an arm to kind of go and press a button physically, which is going to cost you an amazing amount of money and really unreliable. Or you could just use the elevator control system and just Wi-Fi tell it, and that'll be way faster.
I had some friends who are working on a delivery bot where their big challenge was they were in a location where it never became pedestrian walking unless the button was pushed. So they couldn't really leave Stanford's campus all that easily.
Yep. That's exactly it.
So we have that tie-in to the elevator system. What types of things do you think, if we're driving through hallways that are busy and not busy, do you think we can just wait until they're not busy? Or how do you think we do the path planning around the busy students?
I think the best way to do this is you record data kind of over time, over several days or weeks or months, and you kind of predict, right? So if you have to pathfind through the cafeteria, you look back historically and you say, oh yeah, around noon, the cafeteria is really full. I probably shouldn't go there.
I mean, that probably would live on the fleet management layer.
Exactly.
Go this path, don't go that path.
Exactly.
The central artery is almost always busy. Avoid it altogether.
Exactly. And so again, the Open Source Robotics Foundation's work on OpenRMF is what would allow that kind of communication to vehicles.
So we know the path that we should go on, but I mean, I'm still thinking about the weird stuff that happens in campus hallways. So there's some trash cans that move around. There's people walking.
Yeah.
There might be, some hippie kid sitting on the ground looking at his laptop forlornly. There might be a drum circle going on.
Yep.
It might be like a cold campus, so all these things happen indoors.
So there's kind of two problems. One is making sure your robot doesn't get lost. The nice hack that I've always admired is some robots will actually have a camera that looks at the ceiling and they map the ceiling rather than the actual floor.
Really?
Right? So your robot could be completely surrounded by humans and it still knows.
That's an interesting hack.
Yeah, it's a really clever hack. Or
Well, I mean, like, isn't ceiling tile just ceiling tile just ceiling tile?
yeah, but there's tiny little variations, like little like light fixtures are at exactly the same position.
And no, and honestly, I don't know how many campuses would care about like putting a piece of tape on the ceiling.
Yeah, or just adding a little bit of texture. Yeah. And so that's a clever hack to make sure you don't get lost even in a crowd. So that kind of not getting lost is part of it, and the other part of it is just not hitting people.
Yeah.
So that's the local planner. So once you have this kind of Google Maps style, you're here, you need to go here. Your local planner tells at any given moment, here's which direction to steer and how fast to go.
So what's our robot look like here? I mean, we need a rugged platform for actually moving around. We can probably do like wheel diff drive, feels the right thing.
Especially indoors.
Yeah.
Smooth floors.
Yep.
You know, it's meant to be accessible for ADA compliance, so smooth.
It's probably a round robot, so it doesn't get stuck in corners. So it's a round robot. It needs a decent amount of power because it's gonna probably the whole cart, the AV cart itself is gonna weigh, I don't know, 50 pounds, 100 pounds?
Something like that, especially with batteries.
Yeah. So then we're looking, I mean, we also might want to be able to plug ourselves in for live streaming these things.
Yeah, automatically plugging in. The Peer 2 had a great video where it could plug itself in, but again, you need a manipulator and stuff like that just to use a standard outlet.
Yeah.
If you had infrastructure like a dock, a special dock that the thing could just drive on.
Well, like what if you have like, you know, those like annoying floor outlets that they have anywhere where they have AV stuff?
Yeah.
Couldn't you just like have a little hook that pops up in the floor outlet cover and then like a very simple thing that like hits it at an angle and goes in?
You know, humans always underestimate how accurate our dexterity is. Actually, getting a robot to plug something into a socket, you're talking about tolerances of like 0.5 millimeter.
Yeah.
Really accurate manipulation. Again, look up the PR2 video, plugging itself in. You'll see it takes like 4 or 5 attempts because it's actually, you need a little bit of force to jam in a plug, but you can't really tell exactly where you are and how well you're jamming it in. And some plugs are sticky and some plugs have those
the floor ones, I feel like floor plugs are more consistent.
They might be consistent. You still got to be crazy accurate.
I mean, like, what's the round part at the bottom of the plug called? Is that the neutral or the ground?
The ground.
Yeah. So you can have a plug that the ground sticks out further. You target the ground into the ground part, and then you like prong the rest of it up as the whole thing folds into position.
I'm no electrician, but I think if we make the ground plug too long, the rest of it just won't plug in.
No. It's like a spring-loaded ground.
Oh, a spring.
Yeah.
Right. So we're custom making. You're still like, is it solvable? Yeah. Will it do it quickly? No. It'll probably take like 10 minutes of retrying.
No, that's 10 minutes of classes these students already were gonna miss. Okay, so a robot probably can't plug itself in. So if these batteries,
it needs a dock, right? Like a Roomba has a dock, it just drives stuff.
Yeah, but they're not going to install AV stuff. So it needs batteries to support, 4 to 8 hours of recording.
Yeah.
It's probably, I mean, the camera angle probably means it already needs to be about as tall as a person. And that's helpful because then it won't bump into people as it's navigating the hallways. What sensor suite do you think we're looking at?
Yeah, so you probably want a mix of LiDAR, ultrasound cameras. Ultrasound in particular is useful for glitzy campuses that have glass walls.
Yeah.
Cameras aren't really going to see them. Your LiDAR is not really going to see them. Even your ultrasound is going to have a real hard time.
Yep.
But at least it's better than nothing.
Yep.
There's millimeter wave radar coming online now. It still has some regulatory issues, but that could be very interesting to add.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the thing is, we're probably going to be constrained to a BOM, like, I don't know, 10 grand, 20 grand.
Yeah. Our bill of materials, all the parts that we put on the system, that's probably about right. You could get by with just moving slowly, which means that you don't have to think.
But then you're probably only recording a class a day. And my guess would be, we probably have to record 3 or 4 classes a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you stagger them, depending on how far across the campus they have to drive. They have to go into. That's going to be tricky.
All right. So we're probably looking at a robot with a bill of materials of $20,000, which means we could sell it for $40,000, $50,000-ish. And we probably need because of all this infrastructure we're going to have to build, it probably, we'd have to charge $10,000 to $20,000 per robot per year as RAS.
Yeah, that seems cheaper than just setting up a microphone and every. Definitely the right solution here.
Especially for videos that everyone's going to watch.
Exactly.
So coming to you soon to a campus near you. We need a name. Class Snooper? Coming to a campus near you, the Class Snooper $40,000. It does everything an AV cart can, plus hit all the co-eds in the hallway. Alrighty. Now that we've solved my bad classroom attendance, what are we going to talk about today, Leah?
So we wanted to discuss, there's been a lot of think pieces recently of kind of an autonomy or AI winter. Mm-hmm. Is the industry kind of overpromised?
And is that a winter brought about because the overlords have blocked out the sun and we are moving into ground to fight them and retake ourselves from the Matrix?
I feel like our Venn diagram of robotics podcast and conspiracy is like, we're really just nailing it. It's a weird conspiracy theory.
Listen, Jennifer Hudson is a reptilian from the Hollow Earth. That's the one thing I know.
What do you think about this? Like, I've seen a lot of business model issues, tech issues, social acceptance issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two articles that stuck out the most to me were Anthony Lewandowski's quotes in a Max Shafkin article in Bloomberg Business Week, and George Hotz's, I'm quitting, AI, autonomy is now what it's cracked up to be post. And then I also, some schmucky guy from some company called Starsky Robotics wrote some article a couple of years ago about how this is all a lot harder of a problem than anyone had thought.
It's your turn to speak.
Yeah. There's also, it looks like, I think it's TechCrunch or somebody is doing an overlay into just how bad everyone's doing. Their target a couple of weeks ago was where my friends at Embark, who, of course, as a publicly traded company, are now worth less than their bank account has money in it. And there's a bunch of other stuff like that on the horizon. Like Ironox did a big nasty layoff. Everyone seems to be in trouble. So
this is the industry as a whole, right?
Yeah.
The tech industry. So let's try to kind of split out the general tech malaise from autonomy and robotics.
I mean, I think what we're seeing is the other side of what we saw in like 2016, 2018, where every third minute an article got posted about look how cool this ML model just improved. Pretty soon, we're never going to have jobs again. And maybe that means we'll have basic income, or maybe that means the overlords will, crush us to death.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of this Gartner hype cycle of kind of inflated expectations. Yep. I think a lot of it was built because in ML, what you want to do is as you're training your machine learning algorithm or generally tech in general, you can kind of really focus down on, I want to solve this very specific, very narrow problem that's going to give pretty decent results, but only for that very specific slice. So for example, like ML to detect humans can do really, really well at detecting humans, will completely fail at detecting dogs.
Wait, but if it can detect humans, then it can be a human and it can pass the Chinese restaurant test.
Yeah, or the Turing test. Yeah. I mean, some of the really large language models like GPT-3 and OpenAI's work is kind of starting to go in a more generalized direction. But for that, you need billions of dollars and enormous compute resources to get
and it still can be a little crusty and hard to find where the actual value is here.
Exactly. So what we're seeing, in my view anyway, is that a lot of companies that focused on a very specific narrow field didn't find the economic return they needed in that particular field.
I mean, I think that's part of it. I mean, I also, and I call out both George Hotz and Anthony Lewandowski are like ridiculously smart people. I've met Lewandowski a couple of times. I've like been at an event or two with George Hotz. They're both like very smart people who are smart in the sense of they think for themselves and they like examine the facts that they see and come to the conclusions based on the facts that they see with, good inductive. Whereas a lot of the autonomy boosters have kind of just been boosting autonomy because other people have been boosting autonomy. And that's always a bit true in a hype cycle. But I don't think the autonomy industry itself is dying or is dead. But I do think it's cocooning. I think essentially we saw a lot of different flavors of caterpillars and weevils and this and that. Some of those got eaten by birds. Some of those died. Some of those are now liquefying themselves and are in a chrysalis and are in the process of becoming butterflies. Some of them will be moths. Some of the caterpillars are beautiful. Some are ugly. But my overall thesis is that we're seeing some of the most exciting stuff to happen in autonomy right now. But it looks different than here's some cool machine learning model that I programmed last week.
Yeah, exactly. There's, to go back a little bit in history, a lot of the early robot navigation and human interaction work was posted, if I remember correctly, like an MIT early project. A professor gave it to his grad students and was like, yeah, solve this navigation problem in a summer. What's the problem? That was like 1970, 1980, and still this problem isn't solved.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of this cocooning is pulling back from the like, I can solve everything all at once to like, I can do this one very specific thing.
And I think more than that, it's not the valuable robots aren't necessarily groundbreaking machine learning model powered.
Yeah.
And that's we got really excited because Google learned how to detect a cat versus a dog. Like we got very excited about the implications of that. And everyone got very slippery slopey about like, if they can detect a cat versus a dog, then soon they'll be able to breed new species of cat dogs that will attack us. And like the logic got lost somewhere between if A, then B, and Z, therefore A with A2. Like that definitely happened. But what I think we've been seeing with our customers at Polymath are these companies who are saying, what is the level of autonomy that we need so that we can solve a problem for our customer?
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you really need to have natural human interactions if you just need to drive a truck?
Yeah.
Like, do you really need to understand?
Or not even that. How do you simplify the truck driving task?
Yeah.
So that like it's already solvable. I mean, I think, we use this podcast to mostly talk about how to build robots, but it might be useful to talk about how to build an app. So to do like a similar version of what we just did, no technology card, because that's not really how you start SaaS companies, but maybe it's more like we want to start an app for campuses. Mm-hmm. And what do they care about at campuses? Maybe they care about scheduling and syllabuses. Well, like what tools exist today that I can force Ilia to integrate together so that we can scrape a list or actually to solve the same exact problem. Yeah. We scrape that same list of classes, find out who doesn't have a Zoom link, do a tie-in with TaskRabbit to dispatch a person to show up to that class, pull out their cell phone and record it.
Exactly. And none of the value there would be generated by ML, like intelligently predicting what class to go to.
But more than that, like you could build $1 billion business in that space without building anything that feels new.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Like you don't have to like web scraping is ancient and reasonably straightforward to do. TaskRabbit is easy to integrate with. Like there's nothing there that you need PhDs for.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a matter of like, all right, let's hustle. Let's hustle and let's scrape this together. And maybe TaskRabbit isn't all that easy. So to start off with, Ilia will make this website. I will make the scraping thing. And whenever somebody clicks that they want a class recorded, I will show up and record it with my phone
with a microphone
and post it on G Drive.
Yeah.
And we can very quickly discover that, nobody cares about this product and no one is willing to pay me $50 to show up and record this on my phone.
Much less build the robot. So let's pull back though. What does this mean for the industry as kind of a whole? Like to my mind, the lesson learned here is that there's been a lot of companies focused on like, here's a particular tech I'm going to apply and like jam it into a market situation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to work. But what's coming next?
I think what's coming next is businesses that work that happen to use the tech. So like a company who I like a whole lot is Kiwi Robotics. I'm an advisor of theirs. They do delivery robots. And Kiwi started because Felipe wanted to do campus delivery. He wanted to build a DoorDash-like product, discovered it was really hard to hire DoorDashers, and started building robots instead to solve that problem. And they were early. They were, fun travails of a robotics company. But I think that's much closer to what the successful robotics companies that are developing right now look like. Whether it's a lawn mowing company that wants to build a great lawn mowing service and like however they get the robot to drive itself is fine. Whether it's a company who wants to make it easier to thin forests to reduce firefighting risks. All of those ideas don't require being the 50th person to build an autonomous vehicle or integrate a LiDAR into a GPU or figure out path planning. They really require knowing what a customer cares about, knowing that that problem is best solved with a robot that's buildable today, and then trying to build that robot.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the, like, from a tech perspective, I always love, again, to use technology to solve something, but I would say that these businesses are successful despite their robots.
Yeah.
Not because of their robots. The robots tend to be their problem center, not their solution.
The businesses are successful even though robots are a pain.
Yeah.
They're successful because humans in their particular use case are so much more of a hassle than really problematic robots.
Yeah.
And that's where this works. I mean, I downloaded Uber as an app in 2013 after thinking it was already too much hype and too annoying, but trying to hail a cab in San Francisco's financial district at 5:15 on a Friday, and it taking an hour, and literally waving at every cab that drove by, them all being full, downloading the Uber app, putting my credit card in it and ordering Uber and getting picked up before an open cab ever drove by. Uber's app at the time sucked.
Obviously, robo-taxis will solve this problem.
Uber's app at the time was terrible. Like, basically, as a company, they were able to hire a bunch of smart early engineers to tie together like the Google Maps API. All their pricing was basically from a lookup table in G Sheets. And it was like a bare bones crappy thing that broke all the time. But it was such a good product that users were okay with a crappy solution. And that's where robots can thrive. Like, if you are in mining, you can't hire people. You just can't get people to live 7 hours northeast of Perth. Like, it's just
and I've been there.
Hardest part. Yeah.
I've been there. It is hot, and it's so hot that the stones themselves over eons have broken into pieces.
What's the social life there? Good place to be 22?
Horrendous. You're living in company housing. There's like one company bar. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that this market emerges from its chrysalises or its cocoons, to use a more common word, is that like companies show up where a hustler and a integration focused CTO can make a product that like does something, which is interesting because like when I started Starsky, people hated the fact that we were vertical, and now seemingly everyone's vertical. And now I think, in this funding, in this economic environment, you got to be horizontal.
It's very difficult to dig out enough value from a very narrow application case than it is to kind of be a little bit more general.
Yeah.
The example we kind of keep using is that everybody and their uncle was building smartphone, or not smartphone, at the time they were just cell phone applications before the iPhone. Yeah. Like BlackBerry was a big player. They're arguably the dominant player. Everybody had their own OS.
They were more like a telecom connected Palm Pilot.
Yeah, or pager.
Yeah.
But then when Apple came out and later Android, you kind of had more of a platform where you could build, where you didn't have to build a cell phone to be able to deploy your chat app.
Yeah.
You didn't have to own the entire tech.
And similarly, if you wanted to build a great cell phone, you didn't have to learn how to be good at building an operating system. And
exactly.
And like, phones suddenly, most importantly, could have more games than just Snake on it. I mean,
old school Snake on a Nokia.
I mean,
solid.
That's probably my number one mobile game of all time. But it's nice now that I have, Clash of Clans or whatever the cool kids play these days.
Old man comment.
Yeah, I know. Clash of Clans is probably dating in and of itself. Yeah, so I mean, I think I think the autonomy industry isn't dead. There's still probably going to be some of these massive raise $100 million before they have anything companies that show up. If I said that none of those will be funded again, an announcement would happen the day after this podcast goes live, and everyone would point it out as what an idiot.
Oh, it's a fate bait.
Yeah.
Anytime you say this ain't not going to happen, it's definitely going to happen.
But I think like realistically, where Waymo and Cruise are at right now is they're focusing on how do we scale unmanned robotaxi trips. I don't think it's easy to rationalize in giving $2 billion or $10 billion to come to a company who wants to get to that stage 8 years from now. And if you're doing stuff that isn't on public roads, what the market really wants these days is, okay, cool, show me a business. Like at Starsky, we saw this whole scenario in 2019 where we basically built a truck that could drive without a person in it. We built a business where the end customers thought we were holding their freight with unmanned trucks. And I went and showed investors, and they're like, this robotics thing seems hard and expensive. Have you considered just winding that team down and just being a software-enabled trucking company? Oh, well, we wouldn't be able to scale truck drivers that much because of these problems. Oh, well, then what about not having a trucking company just doing autonomy? Well, the robot's really hard. So, we're building a system that can only really work, in 5 years, might be able to work on a total stretch of maybe 10,000 miles. Oh, I think we're going to pass. Because the reality of being vertical was that we built both a crappy robot and we built a crappy trucking business.
So as an alternative, maybe what we kind of recommend in our business philosophy is that you guys build a good business and we can focus on building the good robot.
Or the good autonomy part of that robot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We like to think that's the hardest part. I'm sure everybody thinks that's hard.
We both think that's the hardest part and know that in reality, figuring out how exactly to add value to a port or a landscaping business or an oil field or a whatever, really kind of hard.
That's the actual hard. Yeah. Again, succeed despite your robots, not because of your robots.
Well, awesome. Ilia, what are we going to talk about next week?
Next week, we're going to talk about how to measure robots.
Oh.
What is valid data? What is just going to lead you astray?
That's easy. Just look at disengagements per month.
Yeah, it's a fantastic metric. We should legislate.
And on that note, for those of you who are triggered, I will leave that to you for next week.
Signing off. See you next time.